Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. What she had said back in the restaurant had really pissed him off. Like, how could she say those kinds of things right after the Hokage, his grandpa and her old instructor died defending Konoha? She had just been offered the most reputable, most powerful and most noble position in all of Konoha and she just had to decline it in the most disrespectful way. How could she say those things? He still remembered how angry he got when he heard her say those things. It was really one of those rare moments when he actually let his anger get the better of him. What he did next, even he would admit was stupid. Challenging one of the 3 most powerful ninja in the world and actually expecting to win. Regret was not a word strong enough to describe the pain he felt after that. Though he guessed it was not all in vain. She had given him a chance. Complete the Rasengan and she would become Hokage. If he lost, he would lose all the money that Jiraiya gave him off that white-suited moron. It was a lot of money. Much more than what he had saved up. Perhaps maybe. No. He would perfect the Rasengan and if he could not, he would drag Harold away into the Hokage Tower even if ited him. Most likely it would have, but maybe he could convince Kayumi to lend him some power to do it. Having tails must have been useful. Having tails are useful, said Kayumi with a nod as she casually checked her nails, but no. I won't lend you my power to do something that's stupid. But there's no way I'm gonna be able to complete the Rasengan in 3 days. I was blowing steam out of my, replied Naruto as he leant forward in his seat. Kayumi rolled her eyes. Maybe this will teach you that you don't always get what you want, even if you really want it. But, began Naruto as he pouted before he tightened his jaw, fine. I don't need your help. There was a moment of silence. You won't help me, so I'll help myself. Wake me up, replied Naruto as he crossed his arms. She felt an eye twitch. What? You heard me, stated Naruto in response as he let out a sigh. It'll just be like back to normal. I've gotten this far without your help. Normal. But, look, I am thankful for all the help you've given me so far, but I'll never be able to stick to my morals if I keep relying on you to get stronger, replied Naruto, his lips curving downward into a frown. Well then. She snarled, exposing her fangs, fine. Go do your own damn thing. Just don't come crawling back to me when you fail. Okay, replied Naruto with a solemn nod as he stood up and walked over to her. Damned stupid brat, remarked Kayumi with a low growl as she waved her hand, prompting Naruto to fade away. Her cage was silent once again now that the annoying monkey was no longer there to pester her. She sat there quietly for a few moments before she let out a quiet sniffle. Gritting her teeth, she slowly raised her legs and pressed her knees to her chest before wrapping her arms around them. Looking over at the empty throne in front of her, she furrowed her brow and let out a snarl. Damned stupid brat. She let out lowly. Stupid brat. She let out another sniffle. Stupid. 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 Her tails wrapped themselves gently around her. I'm stupid. Why did she feel like this? Why did she feel so empty? She hated this feeling. It was not the emptiness she felt when she was first caged inside of the seal. No, back then, she was never really empty. It was impossible to feel empty if you had nothing inside of you to begin with. That damned monkey. That stupid, repulsive, monkey. That blonde knuckle-headed moron. Damn it, she refused to say his name. It was a disgusting name, fit only for a disgusting species. But she wanted to say it. She, despite every part of her not wanting to, liked saying his name. For every flaw that he had, for every stupid thing that he had ever said or done, he was just perfect. No, far from it. He was just Naruto. She needed a new category for him. He was unlike any monkey she had ever met before. He did not fear her to the point where she felt unwelcomed. He did not hate her, or try to abuse her power. He was only monkey that had ever actually asked for permission for anything from her. What was that word he used to call his kind again? Humans. Yes, that was it. He was a human. The first of his kind in her eyes. All the rest were just dirty monkeys. Perhaps deep down, she had just the tiniest bit of respect for the boy. Though it could have been misplaced as she never really had much experience with humans. Being as large as she was outside of the seal, they always looked like ants to her. Now that she was looking at one from close-up, her previous opinions have all become messy. There was also that fuzzy feeling in her chest that was constantly stirred whenever Naruto said anything good to or about her. It was almost, dare she say, warm. She shook her head to clear her thoughts. She hated being alone. If anything was going to eventually her, it would be her brain overloading with thoughts and exploding. She needed to rant. She wanted to rant and for Naruto to hear her rant. She needed to get all these stupid thoughts out of her head. But how could she? Her pride would never let her. God, she hated the idea of Naruto, but she also loved it. Even if she had till the end of the world to think about all this, she seriously doubted she would ever come up with an answer. How did it end up like this? First, Tsunade just had go and betray them. Like, if she was going to drug the perverted old man, could she at least have made a poison that destroyed his insane libido? He actually would not have minded since he was already getting sick of trying to sleep whenever Jiraiya had company over. Then they had go against Orochimaru and his nerd sidekick Kabuto. Sure, the fight seemed somewhat even since Tsunade was insanely powerful, and even when weakened, Jiraiya was still insanely powerful. Plus they had Shizune. But Naruto had no idea that Tsunade was afraid of blood. How in the world can a ninja be afraid of blood? A medical ninja no less. Man, he should have known that he was screwed from the start. Life was pretty much always against him. Oh, how he wanted to be back in Konoha. Back in Konoha with a big bowl of ramen to comfort him. Extra pork, extra noodles, extra everything. Sadly, instead of eating delicious ramen, he had to do battle with one of the most powerful ninja in the world. Not only did he get his beat, but he also had to get his beat without Kayumi's power to help him out. Orochimaru, that snake pedo, just had to go and give him a hickey too. A painful one at that. Next thing he knew, he was blacking out. It was just like falling down a cliff all over again. Except this time, someone was going to try and take advantage of his unconsciousness in him. Crap, he really did not want to die to that long-tongued freak. What the hell is going on? Cried Naruto in confusion as he appeared in his mindscape. That man you are fighting, the one with the black hair and pale skin. He placed a seal on you, replied Kayumi, prompting Naruto to widen his eyes. Wait, so like that seal that Sasuke had? She nodded. Yes, but don't worry. Why shouldn't I worry? Actually, you should worry. What? Why? Because the seal he just gave you is incompatible with seal on your stomach. They're fighting for dominance over your body. The seal on your stomach is stronger though, replied Kayumi with a nod. Then why should I worry? Asked Naruto, his hand shaking slightly in front of him. Because the seal on your stomach will get damaged in the process, weakening it just enough for me to slip through and finally escape this cursed prison, answered Kayumi, the corner of her lip curving upward into a fang-revealing smirk. What? Let out Naruto, his eyes widening as he took a step back. Her smirk grew wider. Yes, Naruto. You heard that right. Any second now, I'll be out of here. Free to do what I want. Free to finally roam this world again. She let out an evil laugh, her chest buffing out as she threw her head back. If only you had begged me for my power, then this would not have happened. Good thing that you didn't though, because now I can bust out of this crappy cage. Naruto swallowed quietly in response. You're not going to go unpunished forever, Kayumi. Someday, someone is going to stop you, whether you want them to or not. Foo, chuckled Kayumi as she licked her lips. I can already taste freedom. Say what you want. I'll defy your expectations. Naruto balled his hands into fists. I would also try to get comfortable if I were you. Me breaking out of here is going to be very painful. Her words prompted the boy's eyes to widen. Eep. Just as he let out that, the pain hit him. White hot, like someone had started a fire in his stomach that radiated out in sharp waves. Compared to the pain he felt when Tsunade hit him, it was as if that were a mosquito bite compared to the pain he was currently feeling. The walls of his mindscape began trembling around him before breaking down. Soon, he found himself floating briefly in darkness before being sent back into consciousness. Naruto! Cried a female voice. Whether it was from Tsunade or Shizune, he did not know. All he really could focus on was the terrible pain in his stomach. God, was this what giving birth felt like? Forcing one of his eyes open, Naruto nearly screamed as he saw a gigantic, furry paw extend out of his stomach. The paw was then followed up by the rest of her arm and then parts of her head. That was when he began screaming because it felt like he had the worst stomach ache ever. It like that time he drank spoiled milk but like 10 times worse in terms of pain. For a moment, he blacked out, but when he woke back up, Kayumi had already pulled herself free from his seal. Well, not really. She was tugging one of her hindlegs out of his seal, but you get the idea. Just a few seconds later, she was finally out. Stretching for a few seconds, the nine-tailed fox then threw her head back and began laughing loudly. Muhahahahaha. I'm finally free. It's the nine-tailed fox. Uttered a raspy voice, who was most likely Orochimaru. In response to hearing his voice, Kayumi turned her head to look at him. Orochimaru swallowed quietly in response, the weight of his useless, limp noodle arms just adding on to the fear he felt in the presence of the most terrifying being known in the world. For some strange reason, he found himself unable to move. Was it the overwhelming power he felt from the tailed beast, or was it because he was quite literally scared shitless? He did not have time to answer that question as his fear only grew stronger as the nine-tailed fox's large paw casted a shadow over him. Squish. Naruto quirked a brow. What was that squishing sound just now? Why you squashed Lord Orochimaru. Oh, Kayumi must have crushed Orochimaru to death. Good. The creepy bastard deserved it. Hummed Kayumi, the sound coming from the back of her throat and sounding more like a low growl than anything else. Did you just say something to me, monkey? Now it was Kabuto's turn to feel the overwhelming presence that was the nine-tailed fox's glare. Metaphorically shrinking, Kabuto slowly backed away. Did you say something to me, monkey? Asked Kayumi once again, baring her fangs at the white-haired boy. I, stammered Kabuto, his legs visibly shaking as he tried to get the words out. Move your foot off of Lord Orochimaru. You dare order me around? Asked Kayumi, tilting her head to the side as she raised her foot, revealing a flat Orochimaru sticking to the bottom of it. Kabuto did not respond. TCH, be grateful that I will grant you and your pathetic master mercy. Come, peel him off my foot and be gone. Roared Kayumi as she flicked Orochimaru's paper-thin body off of her paw towards Kabuto, who caught it with shaking arms. Naruto let out a quiet groan as he propped himself up on his elbow. Squinting his eyes, he took note of how Orochimaru looked kinda like a white sheet of dried seaweed and the fear in Kabuto's eyes. He then watched Kabuto carry his flattened master away as he ran towards the forest. Hopefully they would never bother him again. He did not count on that. Looking back at Kayumi, Naruto's eyes widened. This was the first time he had ever seen her true form, and in all honesty, she looked kinda cute. Not cute like how guys liked cute girls, but like cute as in it made girls squeal cute. She looked like a super-sized version of a chubby, baby fox. Was this truly the nine-tailed fox that attacked Konoha all those years ago? All the depictions of it always made her look terrifying. He tried to stand up, but hissed sharply as an intense pain shot through his body. It felt like every below his chest had suddenly decided to cramp. Ouch. Turning his head over to look at his friends, Naruto saw that Jiraiya was slowly sneaking up to him. Hopefully he would try to save him rather than throw him off a cliff. Hopefully. Jiraiya. Shish, Naruto, I'm gonna try and get you outta. Jiraiya was promptly interrupted as Kayumi slammed her arm down in between them, blocking the old man's path. You are not going anywhere, stated Kayumi as she looked down at the two little monkeys. You still owe me. Why the heck would I owe you anything? Shouted Naruto in response, wincing slightly in pain as he did so. I think you've crippled me. My legs. I can't move my legs. Kayumi rolled her eyes before she bowed her head so that she could get a closer look at him. TCH, you really are a weak monkey, though you do pique my interest with your crippled legs. Perhaps if I hurt you further, I may evolve you into an entertaining howler monkey. Naruto swallowed audibly. Please don't do that. He then looked over at where Jiraiya would have been if Kayumi's arm was not in the way. Tell her, Jiraiya, tell her not to hurt me anymore because I've had enough for today. There was a moment of silence. Naruto blinked. Yeah, hey, monkeys, stop talking to each other. You would do well to respect me. I can all of you with a single sneeze, ordered Kayumi with a snarl, prompting Naruto to look back at her. Look, whispered Naruto with a groan, just loud enough for her to hear him. What do I owe you? Ramen, stated Kayumi plainly, prompting Naruto to quirk an eyebrow. Ramen, she nodded, the sheer size of her head fanning a huge wave of wind into his face. Yes. You promised me the greatest food in the world to sat my hunger. I am hungry. On a side note, if I do not like ramen, I will you and everyone in your village. What happens if I don't get you ramen? Asked Naruto uneasily. All you and everyone in your village. Foo. This was perfect. Using ramen as an excuse to follow him back to his village was absolutely genius. It was the perfect compromise between her pride and her wants, needs. No, not yet at least. Her pride wanted her to slap herself. She would do it later. Well, I can't move. I think I tore every muscle in my lower half, replied Naruto as he glanced down at his legs. TCH, you monkeys were always so fragile. Like delicate little dolls that occasionally screamed or made little beautiful red pools, remarked Kayumi as her tail swirled around him, covering the both of them inside a dome of fur. What are you doing? Asked Naruto, glancing around at the large fluffy tails as Kayumi transformed back to her little adorable human form. What does it look like I'm doing, idiot? Replied Kayumi as she rolled her eyes. You're injured. While your body already contains a very strong life force, you're still going to be stuck with all those torn muscles for a while, and I am very impatient. So what are you going to do? I'm going to fix them. Duh, answered Kayumi as she raised her hand to flip her hair, and do not worry. You need not feel embarrassed, for my tails are here to cover you. Wait, why should I be embarrassed? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side. Kayumi was quiet for a moment. Well, stammered Kayumi, her cheeks turning a subtle shade of pink as she glanced away. I need to heal your body with my chakra. I need to take off your pants and your jacket. And I need to touch you. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That seems weird. Tsunade doesn't need to touch me when she uses her healing techniques. Yeah, well, tailed beasts work differently, alright. Now shut up and be grateful that I'm actually taking the time to heal you. The actual reason was just because he wanted to touch him. Just a bit, mind you. Just a bit. Just a little, tiny, itty bit. Alright. Eesh. Okay. Here I go. I'll start with your pants. Might as well get the most disgusting part out of the way first. Naruto glared. Okay. There was a moment of silence. So I noticed you're still wearing that scarf and kimono. What about it? I think it looks nice on you. She blushed. Let's not do small talk. There was another moment of silence. How do I get this damn thing off? You got to pull down the zipper and then pull them off. Is this the zipper? Yes. Ow. Stop. That's too rough. Sorry. Hey. That's the first time you ever apologized to me. What apology? I didn't apologize. You're deluding yourself. You're a crazy monkey. A crazy Capuchin. I'm pretty sure you just Apollo. Ow. Stop. Too rough. That's what you get. I was just pointing out your apology. Shut up. Just be quiet. Okay. Here I go. Alright then. Replied Naruto quietly before Kayumi placed her hands onto his thighs and began channeling a bit of her chakra into his muscles. Whoa. That feels actually really good. Fuwa. What was that cute noise you just made? Nothing. She would never admit to him that his touching him felt weirdly pleasant to her hands. He was just so damn warm. What she would have given to have a snuggie like him to snuggle up with when she slept. It would have been amazing, especially when she occasionally slept in caves. So how long is this going to take? Just a few more seconds for this leg. Your hands really are soft, ya know. Grr. I told you to shut up, remember? Yeah, well, I also noticed that in your fox form, you had paw pads. I wonder if they're soft too. I am not soft. What's wrong with being soft, Kayumi? She opened her mouth to speak but quickly closed it when she could not come up with an answer. Furrowing her brow, she went back to channeling her chakra into Naruto's legs. Well, being soft only lets others take advantage of you, answered Kayumi solemnly, her voice barely just there before she took her hands off of his legs. Take off your jacket. I'm done with your legs. Her unusually quiet response prompted Naruto to quirk an eyebrow, but he complied nonetheless. Taking off his jacket, he placed on the side before he rolled up his shirt up to his chest. Something wrong, Kayumi? She shook her head. No. You sure? Yes. Kayumi. Why are you doing all this? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side as he looked at her. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could just hide your ears and tail and go find yourself a ramen stand. Ramen is pretty cheap. Yeah, well, you should just be grateful that I've decided to eat the ramen that you eat. Naruto looked at her for a second before letting out a laugh, followed up by wheezing as he tensed up his torn muscles. Hey, why are you laughing? Because even though you always went on and on about ditching me the first chance you got, you're still gonna follow me around. That's not true, protested Kayumi, her cheeks lighting up a brilliant shade of red. Alright, I'll believe you, replied Naruto, giving Kayumi a small smile. Yeah, well, let's quickly wrap this up. Your perverted teacher's baby techniques are really starting to piss me off. What do they think I'm even doing in here? Eating you. You're much too small. You would barely fill me up. Gee, it makes me feel so much better knowing that I'm basically an appetizer to you, replied Naruto sarcastically as he rolled his eyes. Well, you are though. Well, I didn't need to know that. Yeah, whatever. I'm done with you here anyways, replied Kayumi as she rolled his shirt down before sighing quietly. I am not looking forward to talking to monkeys. They're not so bad once you get used to them, Kayumi. She scoffed. Yeah, as if I want to get used to being around monkeys. I think I've condescended myself enough these past 10 years. Well, alright then, replied Naruto with a shrug. Look, I'm here coming with you to mingle with the locals. I just want ramen, stated Kayumi with a nod. Ramen and Naruto, but the last part was a secret. Oh, how her pride was literally screaming at her right now. Oh, okay then, replied Naruto, his voice fading off as he finished his sentence. Yeah. Let out Kayumi as she stood up, her tails suddenly shrinking until they became proportional to her body, revealing them both to Jiraiya, Tsunade and Shizune. Naruto, I'm coming to save yo. Whoa, hello there, began Jiraiya valiantly only for his voice to drag on as he saw Kayumi. Kayumi blanched. Can it, monkey? Your gaze disgusts me. I would advise you to look away this instant. Eesh, you don't need to be so rude, chimed in Naruto, prompting Kayumi to flick him on the head. Ow. Do not presume you can order me around just because I was stuck inside of you for 10 years. Alright, I got it, replied Naruto as he looked over at Jiraiya. He then looked over at Tsunade and Shizune as they jogged over. What is the meaning of this, Naruto? Is this the nine-tailed fox? Asked Tsunade as she glanced back and forth between Naruto and Kayumi. Naruto looked over at Kayumi. Do I introduce you or do you introduce yourself? Kayumi shrugged. Just don't tell any of these monkeys my name. They do not deserve to have it grace their ears. Oh, okay, replied Naruto as he looked back at Tsunade. How can you stay so calm about this? Murmured Jiraiya as he sat down and tried to process all the stuff that had just happened. Everything just sort of feels like a dream, answered Naruto with a shrug. I mean, the only time I would ever talk to the nine-tailed fox was when I fell asleep. Kayumi walked up to him and gave him a light punch on the shoulder. Well, you're not dreaming anymore, monkey. Yeah, replied Naruto before he looked over at Tsunade. So yes, this is the nine-tailed fox. Not what you were expecting, huh? Tsunade shook her head, her eyes wide as she took in Kayumi's form. Not what I was expecting at all. If the nine-tailed fox can change forms like this, what about the other tailed beasts? Oh, they can do that too, answered Kayumi simply as she brushed her hair to the side with her hand. Grunted Tsunade before taking a deep breath. Alright then. So what were you doing with Naruto earlier? Healing him. How? Asked Tsunade, her brow tensing up slightly as she asked her question. Using my chakra. I have perfect chakra control. Her answer prompted Tsunade to widen her eyes. Perfect chakra control. There is no such thing as perfect chakra control. Well, began Kayumi with a shrug, you are mistaken. A mistaken monkey. A mistakey. Tsunade gave her a weird look upon hearing, mistakey. Kayumi cleared her throat. I am a being made of nothing but chakra. I can manipulate it all to do whatever I want with it. I can even materialize objects. Show me, ordered Jiraiya, his curiosity piqued upon hearing Kayumi's words. Look at these clothes I'm wearing, said Kayumi, narrowing her eyes at Jiraiya for asking someone from her, as she pointed over to her kimono. These are made from my chakra. She then pointed over at Naruto. I'll go ahead and just make a copy of that jacket. Snapping her fingers, a small little swirl of red chakra pooled in her hand before suddenly poofing up into an identical jacket. She then tossed the jacket over at Jiraiya, who caught it. This. Wow. said Jiraiya with a gasp as he took a step backwards. How in the world could you possibly create something like this? Secret. But, secret. I don't tell secrets to monkeys. They'll just end upping themselves over it. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes before tossing the jacket back at Kayumi. Before it reached her, she snapped her fingers once more, causing the jacket to disintegrate into a cloud of red chakra that quickly flowed back towards her. Huh, let out Naruto, I always thought you could do that in the seal. Well then you were wrong, replied Kayumi as she looked towards him. That's actually kinda cool, stated Naruto with a small smile, like actually really cool. Kayumi blushed as she waved a dismissive hand towards the boy. Yeah, whatever. So then, began Naruto as he looked over at Tsunade, his smile widening as he did so. Earlier in the fight, I showed you the Rasengan. So I guess I win the deal, right? He saw one of Tsunade's eye twitch as she stepped back and placed her hands on her hips. Well, I guess you did, answered Tsunade as she walked over to Naruto, ignoring the glare that Kayumi sent her way. I'll be the next Hokage. And, continued Tsunade as she dipped her head and took off her necklace before placing it around Naruto's neck. Here is the necklace that you worked hard for. May it guide you on your journey to becoming the next Hokage. Naruto felt tears of joy well up in his eyes. Gee Granny Tsunade. Tsunade's eye twitched. Who the hell are you calling, Granny, brat? Not you, answered Naruto as he scooted away from her and back towards Kayumi. Before he could fully back up, Kayumi placed a foot on his shoulder and held him in place. Well then, you three monkeys, stated Kayumi as she pointed at Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizune, you three are now my slaves. You three will guide this little runt and me back to your village so that I can eat ramen. You were actually serious about that? Asked Shizune with an incredulous expression on her face. Kayumi turned her head slowly to look at Shizune and glared at her, eliciting an immediate, eep. From the girl. I am always serious. You monkeys best be aware of that, answered Kayumi through grit teeth, exposing her fangs to everyone. Be careful, Naruto. Looks like you've gotten a feisty one, whispered Jiraiya into Naruto's ear, prompting the boy to nod. Jiraiya then cleared his throat. Alright then. Since you won't give us your name, I'll just call you the Nine-Tailed Fox. Let's get you over to Konoha, feed you ramen and then you can be off on your way. Just make sure you don't get sealed up again by an opposing village. Kayumi held back the urge to sneeze on him. Yes, I will keep that in mind. So how do we know you are actually just going to our village to eat? How are we supposed to know you aren't just going to start destroying it? I'm not going to go down in history as the Hokage that only lasted one day, asked Tsunade as she crossed her arms, her huge bosom popping slightly upward as she squeezed them. Kayumi narrowed her eyes and glanced down at Tsunade's chest for a split second. Damn cow. Those things could feed an entire family for a month. I do not lie, unlike you monkeys, answered Kayumi plainly, and at this point, I could care less about the well-being of your village. Now can we get moving? I'm hungry. I think we should just start going, chimed in Naruto, prompting Kayumi to look down at him. It's just ramen. Plus I don't think we should try arguing with the nine-tailed fox. Your little runt monkey is right. It would not be wise to argue with me, stated Kayumi with a nod, the weight she put on Naruto's shoulder lessening as her lips curved upward into a small smirk. The three adults, no longer seeing much reason to say anything else, simply agreed with what she said. This was going a whole lot easier than she thought it would. Which was great and a clear example of how she came up with the best plans. Before long, they were all standing up and getting ready to head back to their hotel before heading back to Konoha. They walked in an incomplete backwards triangle, with Jiraiya, Shizune and Tsunade in the front and Naruto and Kayumi in the back. Fufufu, all was going according to plan. Getting through the front gate was easy enough. It was pretty handy being made of chakra since you could just change your body to fit whatever situation you find yourself in. All Kayumi had to do was hide her ears and her tail, shorten her fangs and shorten her hair a bit. While she did turn a few eyes, no one called her out, which was a good thing. Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizune had not spoken much during their journey back. Was it because they were still processing everything that happened, or maybe they were using some super secret technique to communicate with each other telepathically? Who knows? By the time they got back, it was already evening, a perfect time to eat ramen. Actually, all time were perfect for eating ramen, but evening was the most perfect of them all. Cold air, hot soup and delicious noodles. What better combination is there? Looking down to his side, he took note of the small frown that Kayumi had on her face. Something wrong? Asked Naruto quietly, prompting Kayumi to widen her eyes and look up at him. I don't like tucking my ears and tail in. It's uncomfortable, answered Kayumi as she placed a hand on the side of her head. Can't you hide them without tucking them in? She quirked a brow. Would you have a suggestion? I mean, you could just make a hood to hide your ears and maybe just carry around a huge backpack for your tails, replied Naruto, prompting Kayumi to glance off in thought. He waited patiently for her to respond. Hummed Kayumi pensively before turning her head back to look at Naruto. You've given me a smart idea for once. Good job, monkey. Naruto chuckled quietly. Yeah, thanks. But I can't really do that right now. There's too many monkeys around us, replied Kayumi as she held back the urge to glare at all the monkeys walking around her. Well, we could just find an alleyway. Do you honestly think your 3 monkey handlers will just let you leave? They are already suspicious of me enough. You could always ask. They'll say no. You'll never know if you don't ask. She opened her mouth to speak, but quickly closed it. Fine. I'll ask them. With that said, she skipped forward over to the 3 adults before tapping Jiraiya on the back, prompting him to turn his head back and look at her. Hummed Jiraiya as he quirked a brow. Naruto and I will be heading off so that I can stretch out my ears and tails. Alright, okay, replied Jiraiya simply without even missing a beat, prompting Kayumi to widen her eyes. Well alright then. See ya, you old perverted ape. She left before she could see Jiraiya's response to her words and went back to Naruto. All Naruto did was quirk an eyebrow at what she said before she pulled him away by the sleeve. Off they went, to the nearest alleyway, which conveniently was actually really close by to Ichiraku's ramen stall. MMMMMPH. Strained Kayumi as she forced her ears and tails to pop back out. Where do you even keep them? Asked Naruto as he watched her stretch. Inside me, answered Kayumi simply. I'm a being of pure chakra, remember? When I tuck in my tails, I'm really just making myself denser. Yeah, I'm still a bit confused on that, replied Naruto as he gave her a sheepish smile. So you can make anything with your chakra? Everything except food. Why not food? Asked Naruto as he tilted his head slightly to the side. It's not because I can't. It's because if I were to turn part of myself into food, it would basically be cannibalism if I were to eat it. Plus I am not interested in feeding monkeys with myself, answered Kayumi as her tails flexed and unflexed around her. Ah, gotcha. He paused for a few seconds. So since you can control everything about yourself since you're made of chakra, how come you don't make yourself taller and more intimidating? Asked Naruto as he leaned back against the wall. She shrugged. Reasons. Yes, reasons, replied Kayumi dismissively. Oh, okay. I won't ask any more then. hummed Kayumi in response as she snapped her fingers, summoning up a simple cloak and large backpack to hide her fox traits. Better. She nodded. Better, yes. Come here. Pat me on the head, ordered Kayumi, to which Naruto chuckled lightly. Sure, replied Naruto as he raised a hand and placed it on top of Kayumi's head. Rub, rub, rub. It seems your skills have improved. Naruto kept on petting her. Or perhaps it's because it's been far too long since you've given me my head pats. I think it's because I've gotten better, replied Naruto as he ran his fingers through Kayumi's hair. I think it's the latter. HMPH. Kayumi suddenly sniffed into the air, her nose twitching a bit as she did so. What's that smell? What smell? Asked Naruto before he sniffed softly. Kayumi looked up at him. Oh, I know that smell. What is it? It's ramen. So that's what ramen smells like, huh? Asked Kayumi as she licked her lips. At least the scent is appetizing. Yeah, let's go. I'm starving, replied Naruto with a nod as he suddenly grabbed Kayumi by the hand as pulled her off, onward towards Ichiraku's. Whoa. Hey, unhand me. She did not get a response. Instead, Naruto quickly guided her all the way to the ramen stall. She would never admit it to him, but as she got closer and closer to the source of that delicious smell, the more intensely appetizing it got. It did not help that she was also starving, more so than Naruto. God, she was so hungry. She had to hold back so much when she passed by all those delicious monkeys from earlier. In here, said Naruto enthusiastically as she shoved her into a small stall, through the curtains hanging overhead and into a stool. He followed quickly, almost jumping into his own seat beside her before he called out to the two people working behind the counter. Hey Ayame. Hey old man. I'm back from my trip. Hey Naruto, replied Ayame as she wiped her hands on a towel. Oh. Is this girl your friend? Naruto shrugged. I don't know. Is she? His words were met by a sharp flick to the head. Of course I'm your friend, dummy. Did she really mean that? No way. Right. He would really need to ask her that later. Later as in when? Would she just leave the moment she finished eating, or would she have to stay at his apartment? He only had room for one at his place. This was too complicated. Focus on the ramen. Let its gentle aroma soothe his nerves. Said Naruto awkwardly as she looked over at Ayame. Yeah, this is my friend. That's great. Ayame said in response. What can I getcha? An extra large bowl of char siu pork ramen. With extra pork. Extra noodles. Just give me like 5 of those. 4 for me and 1 for her, answered Naruto as he let out a sigh. I've had a really long day. Ah, what happened? Asked Ayame as she handed her father Naruto's order. You really don't want to know, answered Naruto as he gestured to Kayumi. Oh, I see, replied Ayame with a knowing smile. I'll let you two have some alone time. Naruto quirked a brow as she looked at Kayumi. Kayumi shrugged in response. They sat in relative silence for a few moments. It's then Naruto realized that this was the first time he had ever been alone with a girl. Along with a girl while eating out. Wait. Hold on a minute. Was this a date? What's with your face you're making, whelp? Asked Kayumi as she leaned towards him with an eyebrow quirked. Oh, I was just thinking, answered Naruto as he looked up at her. You are thinking, huh, that must like what? The second or third time I've ever seen you done that. Remarked Kayumi as her lip curved slowly up into a smirk. It would ought to do you well, thinking more. You might find yourself in trouble less. I got it, replied Naruto with a groan. You say that, but no matter how many times I tell you that, you always find a way to screw up. Naruto tilted his head slightly to the side. Are you worried about me or something? No. stammered Kayumi as she dipped her head to hide her blush. I mean, a little, I guess. Better than not at all, replied Naruto as he leaned forward against the counter with a small smile on his face. Whatever, said Kayumi back in a dismissive voice as she glanced off to the side. Here are your orders, chimed in Ayame as she walked up to them with 2 big bowls of ramen in each arm. Naruto whistled back enthusiastically. Thanks. No problem, replied Ayame as she placed down 3 bowls in front of Naruto and the one in front of Kayumi. Kayumi looked up at the female monkey before nodding her head and grabbing a pair of chopsticks. Now that the smell of ramen was right up under her nose, the smell was truly terrifying in terms of delicious goodness. How could monkeys create something that smelled this good? Did monkeys not eat overly salty dried meat and fish back then? She hated veggies. They did not count as food. Fruits were okay. She liked peaches. God, ramen smelled so damn good. She could feel herself drooling, but for some reason she just did not care. Now whose turn is it to make a face, huh? Asked Naruto with a small smirk as he pointed his chopsticks rudely at her. What? Replied Kayumi with a confused look before widening her eyes in realization. It was nothing. Was just thinking. Well then, said Naruto with a shrug as he grabbed a pair of chopsticks. Thanks for the food. With that said, he began happily devouring his meal. Kayumi swallowed quietly. He looked so happy eating that food. So much happier than when he was with her. She furrowed her brow. Why the hell was she getting jealous of food? Thanks for the food, murmured Kayumi quietly as she began eating. Her eyes widened immediately upon slurping up a few noodles. What was this magic? It was so good that she found herself literally vibrating. Everything about it was beyond perfect. Noodles, so chewy and just infused with that delicious pork broth. Pieces of pork, so juicy and tender with just a bit of chew that gave it just that fantastic edge. Before she could even think about trying to stop it, she let out the most adorable little noise, prompting everyone in the stall to look over at her. She looked back at them, frozen, too mortified to talk back. It's that good, huh? Asked Naruto as he gave her a wink and a warm smile. She opened her mouth to speak, but ended up closing it, then opening it again. She was like a fish out of water. It's okay, replied Naruto as he reached over and gave her head a quick pat. I know that it's good too. It's not that good, muttered Kayumi in response as she went back to eating. It was really, really good. Too good. Food should not be this good. Why was it so good? Looking over at her companion, Kayumi widened her eyes as she saw Naruto already starting his 3rd bowl. She had not even eaten half of hers yet and Naruto had already devoured 2 huge bowls of ramen. What? How? How the hell? It's quite something, isn't it? Asked Ayame, knocking Kayumi out of her thoughts. What is Naruto's appetite? Answered Ayame with a quiet chuckle. I guess. Kayumi paused to look back at Naruto. Does he always zone out when he eats ramen like that? It's like there's nothing else in front of him except for that bowl of noodles. Not always, replied Ayame with a shrug, just when he hasn't had any for a while. What an idiot, remarked Kayumi as she went back to eating. Ayame threw her head back and laughed. Yeah, he can be sometimes, but he means well. Without him, I'm pretty sure this ramen stall would be a lot more dreary and boring. Really? Huh? Ayame nodded. Huh? Let out Kayumi as her gaze slowly turned over to Naruto. He looked so genuinely happy, just eating. She felt her lips curve slightly downward into a frown. She somewhat wished he was that happy with her. Then she found herself smiling, because Naruto was smiling. Then she frowned again because her pride was telling her that she was still being beaten by a bowl of noodles. Emotions were so confusing. Going for more noodles, Kayumi realized that she had finished the entire bowl. Huffing quietly to herself, she lifted it up and began drinking the soup. It was not long until she finished, and with a slight thud, she placed her bowl back onto the counter. Looking over to Naruto, she saw that he was already done and was paying the bill. Actually, wait, no, scratch that. Naruto had already finished doing all of those things and was now looking over at her with a warm smile on his face. Eesh, was it the steam coming from the kitchen, or did she suddenly feel hot around her face? So, how did you like your first bowl of ramen? Asked Naruto as he leaned towards her, his smile turning just a bit anxious. She did threaten to destroy his village after all. It was, answered Kayumi, pausing for dramatic effect, satisfactory. Naruto let out a relieved sigh. Phew, that's good. For you, it is, yes. So are you just gonna leave now? Or what are you going to do? She shrugged. I'm sleepy. Bring me to your cave and let me sleep. Cave? I don't think I own a cave. Your home, or I don't know. Your whatever, replied Kayumi as she rubbed her full stomach. She yawned. I forgot you humans did not sleep in caves. Yeah, most of us sleep in apartments now, on beds. The rich ones sleep in mansions. Do you have a mansion? Naruto shook his head. No way. I don't got that kind of money, plus, I don't wanna live alone in a big mansion. Why is that? I mean, I'm just one person. I'd be all lonely in a giant mansion all by myself, ya know. She had never really thought of it that way. Now that she thought about it, she could not help but agree. Grunted Kayumi in response before letting out a delicate yawn. You're really tired, huh? Try not sleeping for 10 years because the seal forces you to stay awake, replied Kayumi before sighing, but I don't want to sleep. First day back in the world and all I did was eat. Well then, what do you want to do? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side. Get drunk, answered Kayumi as she waved over Ayame. Get me a bottle of sake, ordered Kayumi with a nod. Coming right up, replied Ayame as she walked over to the back before coming back with a chilled bottle of sake. Thanks. Why the hell did she just thank this monkey? The words left her mouth before she even knew she uttered them. Crap. Naruto must have been rubbing off on her. Aren't you a bit too young to drink? Asked Ayame as she brought out 2 little cups. You hand me a bottle of alcohol and now you ask. Retorted Kayumi with a smug smirk on her face. Ayame shrugged. Touché. Why did you bring out 2 cups, Ayame? Asked Naruto innocently, placing a finger on his lip as he asked his question. Well, I assumed you two would be drinking together. But I'm too young for that, replied Naruto as he stared at the bottle of sake like it was poison. Which it was. TCH. Does it really matter? You're pretty much dead meat now that I'm not stuck with you anymore, so why not live a little? Naruto gave her a look. I mean, I guess then it's okay. Then here, replied Kayumi as she poured him a cup. Drink. He hesitantly took the cup in his hands before taking a sip. He immediately scrunched up his face at the taste. It was weirdly sweet and had this awful burn. Plus it felt like he was drinking somewhat that was weirdly more air than liquid. Looking over at Kayumi, she saw that she had already downed her first cup. Ah, gasped Kayumi with a small smile, it's been far too long. Naruto quirked a brow. You've drank this stuff before. Hummed Kayumi in response as she began pouring out another cup for herself. I remember once finding myself before a brewery. I was enticed by this scent that came from within, so I tore off the roof and I found lots and lots of barrels full of fermented rice. I don't eat rice, but the liquid that was pooled on top tasted good and made me feel good. replied Naruto awkwardly as he awkwardly swirled the sake in his cup to make a mini tornado. Kayumi let out a huff. Drink. It is not nearly as entertaining drinking alone. Oh, let out Naruto in response as she looked at the sake in his cup. Alright then. Taking another sip, Naruto bit back on the burn before tilting his head all the way back and downing the rest of the cup. He did not like it. Why Jiraiya and Tsunade spent so much money on sake, he did not know. Maybe it would taste better once he got older. Okay. I drank it, are you satisfied now? Asked Naruto as he placed the cup back onto the counter. Nope, answered Kayumi as she poured him another cup. Are you going to help me finish this bottle? Naruto widened his eyes, but that thing is huge. It's the size of my arm. Kayumi looked at him for a few seconds before letting out a giggle. Hey, what's so funny? Nothing, replied Kayumi in between little bursts of laughter. HM, grumbled Naruto as he looked at his cup before taking another sip. Foo. What does a drunk Naruto look and act like? The idea filled her head with ideas. Was he one of those loose drunks that she had heard about, maybe even one of those funny drunks? Perhaps a sad drunk. She hoped he was not a sad drunk. She was not in the mood for tears. Especially monkey tears. Being as young as he was going to get drunk soon enough. An hour later, she was proven wrong. Incredibly wrong. How was the boy even still conscious? She was drunk. Completely drunk to the point where every word she uttered was either slurred or interrupted with a hiccup. Naruto, on the other hand, was fine. Strangely fine. Did he like water down his drinks when she was not looking? Everything was blur. Like the entire world was slanted. Naruto looked so fuzzy. Cutely fuzzy. Like a drawing made by a 3-year-old. So strangely heartwarming. She really wanted to just cuddle up with him. She had never been this drunk before. Not even when she emptied that brewery. Her human form was much more frail compared to her fox form. If only that damned fourth Hokage had not sealed half of her power away. This was not even her preferred human form. She looked like a child. Plus Naruto was a whole lot taller than her. Though whether or not that bothered her, she did not know. She really just wanted to point that out to herself. It was nice, being a bit smaller, because then she could fit on his lap without it feeling awkward. Whoa, wait, was Naruto carrying her? Why was everything suddenly so disorienting? His arms were so warm and his jacket was so fluffy. It was almost like she was floating. Was it from Naruto though, or was it from the alcohol? The sound of a door open and closing alerted her that Naruto had finally brought her to his home. This was the first time she had ever entered the home of a monkey. Well, she got what she wanted. Partially. She was now alone with Naruto in his home. She felt her cheeks heat up slightly, but luckily her blush was hidden behind the overall flush of her face. When she was drunk, her pride was no longer there to yell at her. It was good. No more bad thoughts. Just happy ones. Eesh. You really are hopeless. First day back in the world and you decide to get drunk. What are you, Jiraiya? Don't compare me to that. That howler monkey. Yeah, whatever. Replied Naruto before dropping Kayumi onto the bed. She groaned in response. Your bed is awful. Well, it's the most comfortable thing in my apartment. Whatever. At least it's warm. Here, let me tuck you in, offered Naruto as he tugged the blanket from underneath Kayumi. Oki. Replied Kayumi as she shifted slightly, letting out a little groan or mew every time she found a particularly comfortable position. Oh wait, began Naruto as he took a step back, I forgot something. Welcome to my apartment. It's not fanciest, but it helps me survive the winters. Kayumi narrowed her eyes at his words before glancing around. Why, your apartment looks bland. It needs some decorations. She then hiccuped, to which Naruto rolled his eyes. Naruto, murmured Kayumi groggily as she beckoned at him with her hand. What is it? I've decided that I'm not going to you and everyone in your village. Gee, ain't that great, replied Naruto sarcastically, only for Kayumi to kick him softly on the face with her foot. I'm serious. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I got it. There was a moment of silence. Since you're in the serious mood. Do you remember what you said earlier? Asked Naruto as he kneeled down beside the bed, back at the ramen stall. I said a lot of things earlier. Be more specific. Naruto swallowed quietly. You said that I was your friend. Let out Kayumi as she quirked an eyebrow. And what's so important about that? Did you mean it? What kind of a question is that? Asked Kayumi as she rolled over to her side. I'm just asking whether or not you're my actual friend, answered Naruto as he leaned forward. Kayumi looked at him for a second. It smelled a bit weird too. Like sweet but a bit sweaty. It was weirdly pleasant. Sorta like how Sakura smelled like, but a bit more subtle and actually better. Just what the hell was on his face? Taking a quick and quiet breath, Naruto raised a lazy hand to grab the object. It felt incredibly soft and smooth in his hand. There was a curve here and there, along with these weird uniform, smooth hard things. He groaned softly as he lifted the thing off of his face and onto his chest. It felt weird, but also really good. It reminded him of Kayumi's hands. Just what was he holding? Are you going to just keep groping my foot, or are you going to wake up? Oh. Opening his eyes, he tilted his head upward. Yep. He was holding on to Kayumi's foot. Her incredibly small and cute foot. It was just like her hands. Delicate and ladylike. It must have been nice being made of pure chakra. It meant pretty much every part of Kayumi was perfect. Whether it be her cute little hands, her almost permanently silky red hair, her petite frame, or even her little feet. What he would give to be able to do that. He would seriously not mind being a little taller. Though he guessed it was alright. Why Kayumi had planted her foot on his face, he had no idea. He might as well take advantage of the situation at least. He gave her foot a squeeze. Let go of my foot. And wake up. What time is it? Time for you to get your off the bed. And let go of my foot. He sorta wanted to keep holding on to it, but he really did not want to get labeled a pervert like Jiraiya. Letting it go, Kayumi retracted her foot back onto the ground. What were you doing with your foot on my face anyways? Asked Naruto as he rolled over to his side with a grunt. You wouldn't wake up. Thought maybe sticking my unwashed foot in your face would do the trick. Which it did. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He honestly thought her foot smelled fine. Get off the bed. You're not getting off the bed. Come on, you lazy monkey. What the hell are you doing? Nothing. Replied Naruto as he shifted a bit. It was way too early for him to wake up. It was his off day. The day that Jiraiya had given him to relax after that terribly long journey back. Plus, if he stayed on his side like this, he got the perfect view of Kayumi's thighs, that were just chubby enough to make a visible outline on her kimono. Now that he really thought about it, he preferred Kayumi's legs to Sakura's. Sakura had runner's legs. They were just a bit too thin for his taste. Sure, they were muscular, at least compared to most girls they were, but Kayumi had a bigger butt. He could see just the faint outline of it due to the way that Kayumi was standing with her weight mostly on one leg. She had thicker thighs too. Overall, she was just a bit more filled out below the waist. Not that he minded. Not at all. Man, it felt a little bit weird knowing that the nine-tailed fox's body was his type. Eesh. He felt perverted just thinking that. Mustering up a bit of willpower, Naruto rolled over to his other side so that he was looking at his couch. Man, sometimes he hated being a closet pervert. It was a guilty pleasure that was much more guilty than pleasure whenever he looked at a girl too long. After seeing how Jiraiya ended up, straying from the path of purity, he was determined to stay as clean as possible for as long as possible. Grr! Growled Kayumi lowly before she shouted, "Get your off the damn couch. I'm hungover and I'm hungry." There was no way he was going to fall asleep again. Not with Kayumi bothering at least. He could try though. It's like I got a second heartbeat inside my head. Wake up or I'll go a dozen children. Okay. Fine. I'm waking up, relented Naruto as he threw his blanket off of him. Finally. Okay, I'm up. There was a moment of silence. What the hell is that? What is what? Asked Naruto as he stood up. Why is there a frog on your underwear? Naruto looked down at the front of his boxers and then back up at Kayumi. What's wrong with my frog boxers? I think they look nice. Yeah, well, it's kind of awkward looking at the frog when it's right over your. Never mind. Oh, yeah, so were you like using the frog as an excuse to look at my crotch? His words were like a fire that quickly shot into her cheeks, turning them a red that immediately began spreading to her ears and forehead. To go along with that intense blush of hers, she had widened her eyes and her mouth was opening and closing like a fish. No. Not at all. No. No way. Never ever. No. Naruto looked at her for a second before chuckling. Hey. What's so damn funny? Asked Kayumi as she stomped her foot. You're so easy to embarrass. Answered Naruto with a smile on his face. I am not. Oh come on, Kayumi. You're cute when you have these little reactions. You don't need to be so defensive about it. Replied Naruto in a reassuring voice as he nodded his head. She glared at him for a moment. Stupid monkey. Getting me all worked up, especially when I have such a nasty headache. I didn't know tailed beasts could get hangovers. Well, you do now, replied Kayumi as she folded her arms. Look, since you're hungover and hungry, why don't you go take a shower first? Then we can head out and maybe eat something. Her tail swished gingerly around her as she tightened her arms around herself into a self-embrace. I don't know what this shower you speak of is. Let out Naruto as he quirked a brow. Well, what about a bath? His words prompted Kayumi's ears to perk up a bit. Oh, I know what a bath is. Well, then go take one. Quote. What? I don't know how to use your bath. I tried earlier but it's got all these weird knobs and thingies. She bit her lower lip and nodded, obviously embarrassed by the fact that she had no idea how to use his bathroom. So do you want me to help you? She nodded once more. Naruto sighed. Alright, let's get you into the bath. Okie dokie. Hey, let out Naruto upon hearing such a cute little phrase used by her before walking to his bathroom. Kayumi followed him, her tiny little feet making delicate noises against the wooden floors as she walked. Even sounds she made were cute. He would be hearing a lot more from her now, would he not? She was living with him now. For some reason, it felt much more real now that they were not talking in his mindscape. Like, she was real and he could see her and touch her. Well, maybe not touch, but whatever. Man, it was so much easier not noticing the fact that she was a girl back when it all felt like a dream. He could see a hard road in front of him. A crossroads actually, one telling him to just ignore Kayumi, since she was the nine-tailed fox, and the other one telling him to throw morals to the wind. Though the morals to the wind option was a bit less tempting since he knew that Kayumi would most likely curb stomp him if he tried anything. She did hit like 1,000 times harder than Sakura after all. So you turn this knob, right? Then you just adjust the temperature like this. Here, let me start a bath for you. Ooh, I see now. You monkeys really do come up with the neatest of inventions. While they seem a bit trivial, they do seem convenient. Yeah, I'd like to think so. I do wish that you didn't come up with ninja techniques though. Could have saved myself a decade if your damned fourth Hokage didn't seal me. Naruto rolled his eyes. Yeah, alright then. Hey, Naruto. Yes, Kayumi. Can you stay here while I bathe? What? Why? This is my first time bathing in hot water. I'm kinda scared, answered Kayumi gingerly, her tail swishing around her protectively. I mean, you should be grateful that I'm letting you gaze upon my body. It should be an honor for you. I mean, I don't mind. You are cute after all, replied Naruto as he dipped his head to hide his blush. If she was not so mortified, she would have maybe cheered a little bit. This was a way to get closer to Naruto after all. I'm going to take my clothes off now. So turn around. Naruto tilted his head to side. Weren't you completely fine being around me back in my mindscape? Well, I'm not now, retorted Kayumi as her cheeks flushed. Also, it's dreamscape. Dreamscape. Okay. Dreamscape, replied Naruto as he turned around. Wait. There's a mirror here. I don't care. Just focus on yourself and not me. Alright. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto looked at himself in the mirror. He had bags under his eyes. What time was it? The sun was barely even out. Kayumi was going to absolutely destroy his sleep schedule. As he examined himself closer, Naruto widened his eyes. Hey, what happened to my whiskers? What did you expect? All the traits I passed on to you must have faded when you slept since I'm no longer sealed inside you. Those whiskers was one of your traits. But you don't have whiskers. I do. I just hide them. Why? Because I don't like them. I think my cheeks look better without them. Well, if that's your opinion, replied Naruto as he rubbed his cheeks, taking note of how smooth they were now that he did not have his whiskers. So what's taking you so long? Can't you just disappear your clothes? Yeah, well, it's annoying to summon them again, so I might as well just take them off. You know, began Naruto as turned on the sink, I think you're a bit outdated. He heard her let out a quick, HMPH. And why is that? I mean, pretty much no one wears a kimono now unless a festival is happening, answered Naruto, shuddering slightly as he splashed cold water into his face, plus you talk like an old person. I'm 1,000 years old, Naruto. Yeah, but it'd be kinda cool if you could get with the times. Oh, and how would I do that? Maybe turn that kimono into a jacket. You can keep the scarf since I think it really looks good on you. Maybe you could try shortening your hair. Most of the girls I know have their cut short these days. Not Ino though. Who was Ino? Why would he mention someone else? Kayumi narrowed her eyes. Why was she feeling so jealous? She missed it back when she could keep a cool head, but with Naruto around her, she swore everything inside her was almost always on fire and swirling around as if a Infernato had decided to set up shop in her body. Well, I think I can do those things after I take a bath. Yeah, you can just try it out. If you don't like it, you can always just change back. Yeah, replied Kayumi as she tossed her clothing into the air, where they, excluding the scarf, disappeared. The scarf landed on the towel rack. I'm finished. You can turn around now. Naruto began to turn around. Wait, no, I haven't gotten into the water yet. Naruto turned back to face the mirror, but not before letting out a quick chuckle, much to Kayumi's annoyance. Looking down at the steamy hot water, Kayumi swallowed quietly. Why did it feel so weird bathing in hot water? She had seen hot springs before, but those were natural. She had no idea where this hot water came from. Dipping a toe in, Kayumi shuddered at the blissful sensation. The temperature was perfect. Sliding herself in, she let out a light sigh as the hot water soothed her body. The bubble bath stuff is on the rack. You take bubble baths? Asked Kayumi as she leaned over to look at the multiple bottles on the rack. Sometimes. Okay then. Seems weird. Bubbles seem like a weird thing to want. Which bottle is it? The orange one. I wonder. Oh, it smells. Smells like oranges. Huh, I should have expected that. Oranges smell good though, replied Naruto with a shrug, so can I turn around now? Yeah, go ahead. With an affirming nod, Naruto turned around. Oh, nothing. I don't know why I was acting so shy. I mean, I've pretty much seen you before. Don't say it like it means nothing. Well then, what do I say? I don't know. Then if you don't know, how am I supposed to know? Just shush. So do you want me to leave or something? Asked Naruto after a moment of silence. No, I want you to stay. Alright then, I'll stay. She looked up at him, before curving her lips slightly upward into a small smile. I guess bubble baths aren't that bad. Bubbles are nice. Yeah, they are, replied Naruto with a nod. He watched as she suddenly blushed. Do you want to share this bubble bath with me? He looked at her for a second before widening his eyes. What? She hissed in response. Shish. My hangover. My headache just got like 10 times worse. Sorry, apologized Naruto quickly, making sure that his voice came out much quieter. Kayumi cleared her throat. Yes. Well, apology accepted. Now I ask you again. Do you want to share these bubbles with me? How in the world can you say that with a straight face? Doesn't matter. Look, monkey. Naruto. You need to bathe too, right? Wouldn't it be more efficient if we bathed together? Naruto folded his arms as he took a moment to think. My water bill is kinda already high enough. Water bill. And you did sorta use my bubble bath stuff. Which I only use for special occasions. Special. Am I a special occasion? I mean, you kinda are. You're the nine-tailed fox and you're taking a bubble bath in my bathroom, replied Naruto as he shrugged. Kayumi sighed quietly, raising a hand to pinch the bridge of her nose before murmuring quietly to herself, idiot monkey. I didn't mean it like that. So, yeah, about sharing. I guess. I don't mind. Really. Yeah, I'm okay with it, replied Naruto as he took a step forward. Turn around and maybe scoot a bit forward. Alright. Squeezing her tails to the sides of the tub, Kayumi slowly scooted forward towards one end. Closing her eyes, she relied on her ears for hints at what Naruto was doing. Obviously he was taking off his clothes, tossing them off into the clothing basket. With each article of clothing he took off, she found her cheeks getting hotter and hotter. Her pride wanted her to slap herself. Though her second pride decided that it would be much less damaging to her first pride if she did not suddenly slap herself in front of a monkey. He was coming closer. She squeezed her eyes even tighter as he felt Naruto lower himself into the water. Not much space in here, really? I haven't noticed. You're literally squished into the corner. This bathtub was made for like only one person, replied Naruto plainly as he shifted slightly. Let me sit a bit closer to you then. Naruto swallowed quietly, but, I mean, I don't think you would want to touch me. I am a filthy monkey after all. That's not true, exclaimed Kayumi as she turned around to face him, her eyes immediately widening at her sudden outburst. I mean, that's not true. What do you mean, Kayumi? Asked Naruto, his eyes wide and his voice barely above a whisper. Why, you're not a filthy monkey. Not that filthy at least, answered Kayumi with a nod, her blush spreading to her ears. Was that a compliment? If it was the most Kayumi-style compliment ever. Well, she seriously was going to bankrupt him. Kayumi must have eaten through at least 50% of his savings by now. Her appetite was insane. She must have been holding herself back when he had introduced ramen to her because now all she did was eat and eat. Why was she hungry all the time? Not even he got this hungry this often. Looking at her from across the table, Naruto took note of the empty pile of plates by her sides. She had wanted to eat dango today. She had been introduced to dango back when they had accidentally ran into Anko a few days ago. Anko had teased the hell out of the both of them and had spouted off about some young love nonsense. Naruto had never really pegged Anko as a romantic. Now Kayumi absolutely loved dango. Possibly even more so than ramen. Actually, she pretty much loved food in general, whether it be ramen, dango, sushi, fried chicken or beef bowls. For a being that despised monkeys, she sure loved their food. Over the past week, Kayumi sure had changed. She adapted to monkey life rather quickly. Not only had she basically set up the morning routine of smacking his face with her foot, she had now basically forced him to bathe with her every morning. Sometimes at night too. His teenage heart could only take so much temptation. Plus he swore he could always feel someone watching him whenever he was in the tub with Kayumi. Someone with white hair. Someone who constantly wrote things into a tiny little notebook. He could not really put his finger on who that person was. It was Jiraiya, obviously. If he could lower himself to the point where he felt no guilt watching women in a hot spring, then obviously he would have no hesitation to watch him bathe with Kayumi. Stinky perverted monkey. Kayumi had also ended up changing the clothes she wore after her first day. She kept the scarf and had turned her kimono into a dark blue jacket. Naruto thought it looked good with her red hair. Now obviously you can't just wear a jacket, so she had to then give herself a light gray collared shirt, idea courtesy of a men's fashion magazine Naruto had brought back from the bookstore, and then she had finally finished off her outfit with a skirt and some thigh-high socks. On her feet, she had on a dark blue pair of sandals, just like Naruto. All in all, she pretty much fit in. Maybe she was just a tad bit overdressed, but Naruto liked the look on her. She liked that he liked the look on her. It was a win-win. Blinking once, Naruto focused back on Kayumi. She looked so satisfied, decimating his wallet with her eating habits. Cute too, but mostly satisfied. Where did all that food even go? Did it disappear into a black hole in her stomach? Did she even have a stomach? Do I got something on my face? Oh, no, I was just thinking, replied Naruto as he absent-mindedly swirled the tea in his cup. She looked at him. What were you thinking about? I was thinking about you, answered Naruto simply, his words prompting Kayumi's cheeks to heat up a little. Well then, replied Kayumi as she glanced away. What kind of stuff about me? Naruto shrugged. Just the usual. And what would the usual be? Asked Kayumi as she leaned forward. Well, I was actually sorta thinking about us, answered Naruto, prompting Kayumi to quirk an eyebrow. What about us? Well, how do I explain? Began Naruto, tilting his head upward as he looked toward the ceiling. So you see us two together right here. I do. And we're here together eating dango together. Yeah, what about it? Naruto looked back down at her. Is this a date? He watched Kayumi's expression change from confused, to embarrassed and then to mortified as his words sank in. What? I mean. Do you think this is a date? Naruto blushed. I sorta think it is. He then shook his head. I mean, I don't know. It's just that all that stuff Anko said to us is getting to my head. Let out Kayumi as she dipped her chin down to hide her blush. I mean, I've been thinking about what Anko said too. Naruto looked at her. But don't get the wrong idea. I only follow you around for the food. And the head pats. And the belly rubs. Naruto continued looking at her. The corners of his lip began twitching, and soon enough, he began smiling, then chuckling, and then he was laughing. Kayumi continued to blush as she watched Naruto's enthusiastic reaction. Why yeah, don't worry. I got the right idea, replied Naruto, a few stray bursts of laughter leaving him before he finally calmed down. Kayumi puffed her cheeks out before huffing, you better. Naruto smiled at her. She swallowed quietly. Well then. I do believe that you deserve a small reward for all the money you have spent on me. Oh, let out Naruto in response as he quirked a brow. What kind of reward? Let me give you some advice. In the form of a short story. Answered Kayumi as she nodded her head. You monkeys love stories. What kind of a story though, Kayumi? It better not be about youing 1,000 monkeys, replied Naruto as he leaned in and rested his elbows on the table. He then let out a quiet chuckle. Eesh. Even you got me calling humans monkeys now. Well, at least you now admit it, replied Kayumi with a shrug. Oh, and don't worry. Not that many monkeys die in this story. Said Naruto in response as he gave her an incredulous expression. Go ahead then. Kayumi nodded and cleared her throat. There once was a terrifying monster that lived in a cave near a small village. All the villagers feared her greatly and would always take care to avoid her home. She then paused, expecting Naruto to interrupt her. He did not. It was a pleasant surprise. But there was one girl that did not fear the monster. She was this teenager, on the younger side. The monster believed that all the villagers were inferior to her and saw the young girl as nothing but cheap entertainment. So instead of loving her, the monster decided to keep her around to talk to. Every day, the girl would make the journey to the cave and sit down and talk with the monster. Naruto's eyes seemed to glimmer ever so slightly as he listened to her. They would just talk and talk for hours. There was never a dull day because of that young girl, continued Kayumi as her gaze slowly drifted off to the side. It was before long that the monster forgot about the fact that the girl she was talking to was a monkey. She took a sip from her cup of tea. Though the girl knew that the monster was not truly as terrifying as the villagers said she was still shunned by the entire village for what she did. She did not care though. As long as she could talk with the monster, she was content. Kayumi took a deep breath. The villagers though, they could no longer stand by and watch the girl talk to the monster. To punish her, they cut her legs off so she could not run and presented her in front of the cave. They expected the monster to eat her. She felt her breath catch in the back of her throat, but she played it off by pausing. The monster did not eat her, of course. She was not a savage. At least not back then she wasn't. The girl was young, she had wanted to live. She had begged the monster to help her. Kayumi swallowed quietly, her eyes narrowing as she did so. Naruto watched her, his lips pursed as he took in every single word. The monster of course could heal her. She would never walk again, but she would live. Though now the monster faced a dilemma. Her pride demanded she let the monkey die. It was just a monkey after all. Though obviously she would have preferred it if the girl lived. She then looked up at Naruto. Here, I'll let you guess. Did the monster let the girl die or did she save her? Naruto glanced down at the table as he took a moment to think. I think that the monster let the girl die. Kayumi nodded. You are right. The girl died. The monster, the entire village and the world just continued on. There was a moment of silence. What's the advice you wanted me to get from the story? asked Naruto as he tilted his head slightly to the side. Sometimes, you might just need to throw your pride or morals, or whatever is holding you back to the wind, answered Kayumi absent-mindedly as she swirled her finger around the rim of her cup. Oh, I see. Thanks for the story. You're welcome, replied Kayumi as her lips curved upward into a small smile. Naruto opened his mouth to speak but was interrupted as someone else spoke up. Naruto. What the heck are you doing here? That sounded just like Sakura. He looked toward the direction of where the voice came from. Yep, it was from Sakura. She was with her friends. Strange, she had not seen her hanging out with Ino in quite a long time. She was also with Hinata and Ten. They were all dressed casually, like they were having what appeared to be a ladies' afternoon out. Which they most likely were. Oh, hey, Sakura. Greeted Naruto with a friendly wave. I didn't know you came to this dango place. And I didn't know you liked dango, replied Sakura before turning her head to look at Kayumi. Who's the girl? She's. Let out Naruto awkwardly. I'm his companion, stated Kayumi as she turned her head to face the group, saving the situation from becoming too awkward from Naruto's weak stammers. Kayumi's words elicited a gasp from Hinata, who quickly covered her mouth with her hands to prevent anything from coming out of her. Kayumi quirked a brow at the meek girl. Whoa, your voice is so deep, especially from someone as young as you. Remarked Sakura as she widened her eyes. HMPH, whatever, replied Kayumi with a grunt as she took a sip from her cup of tea. So wait, you said companion. Began the blonde girl as she gestured with her arms, you're Naruto's girlfriend. Kayumi felt her cheeks heat up. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not his girlfriend. But yeah, so you are his boyfriend. Stated Ino with a smug grin on her face. Kayumi did not respond. Instead, she just pulled her scarf up to hide the redness of her cheeks. Scooting off of her side of the table, she then joined Naruto on his side and snuggled up just a bit next to the boy. She watched as Hinata frowned a little. Kayumi could not help but smirk. The way she was positioned so possessively next to the boy just told the four girls that he belonged to her. So who is this girl? Asked Tenten as she walked over and sat on the opposite side of them, ignoring the huge pile of empty plates as she did so. I pretty much know every other female ninja in the village and I don't think I've ever seen her before. Is she a civilian? Asked Sakura, tilting her head to the side as she joined Tenten in the booth. Well, she's not a civilian per se, answered Naruto as he tilted his head side to side. I would just say that's kind of like a traveling ninja. She doesn't really belong to any village. Oh, replied Sakura as she glanced up at the huge pile of plates, I see. Here, let me squish in here, chimed in Ino as she budged in beside Kayumi, much to the demon girl's annoyance. I guess I'll sit here then, said Hinata as she sat down beside Sakura. Kayumi quietly fumed as her private time with Naruto was rudely interrupted. Oh, how she just wanted to slap all these female monkeys in front of her. Female monkeys made the best noises. They were pretty much all howler monkeys in her book. So what's your name? Asked Tenten as she leaned in close. Kayumi just glared at her. She doesn't really want to give her name out, stated Naruto, turning the attention of the girls to him. She really only gives her name out to people that are close to her. So do you know her name, Naruto? Asked Hinata, her pupilless eyes glimmering ever so slightly as she spoke. Naruto nodded, much to Hinata's dismay. Yeah, I know her name. Hinata swallowed quietly. So, Sakura, I see you're hanging out with Ino, pointed out Naruto, prompting Sakura to quirk an eyebrow. Don't you two hate each other? Sakura shrugged. I guess we sorta got back together since Sasuke has been acting like a real lately. Naruto widened his eyes, more so than usual. His words prompted Sakura and Ino to narrow her eyes. Well, yes, I guess. He's just been a jerk, replied Ino as she folded her arms. How so? Asked Naruto. Oh, there's been a lot of stuff happening with him lately, answered Sakura as she frowned. Hold on. I need some tea and sweets before I really get into it. She then waved down a nearby waitress. Everyone at the table besides Naruto and Kayumi ordered. It did not take long for their food to come and for the waitress to carry the empty plates away. Naruto wanted to groan. He was already pretty full and the smell of more sweets kinda made him sick at this point, but he held it down. So where did you meet this girl? Asked Tenten as she took a piece of dango off of the skewer onto her plate. Oh, I met her when Jiraiya and I were searching for Tsunade, answered Naruto, prompting Tenten to widen her eyes. You were searching for Tsunade? Lady Tsunade? Asked Tenten enthusiastically, nearly slamming her hands down onto the table as she spoke. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I did. Tenten whistled. What I would give to meet her. What? Is she your role model or something? Asked Naruto, prompting Tenten to nod. Yep. Naruto opened his mouth to reply but was interrupted as he felt a tug on his sleeve. Looking down, she saw Kayumi gesturing at him with her eyes. Ah, she's so cute, commented Ino with a squeal. She's like a kid. Kayumi turned her head to glare at the girl next to her. Aren't we like all kids? Retorted Naruto with a shrug. Yeah, but like she's so short and adorable. Kayumi's glare only intensified. Ino really needed to get the message before she ended up slapped against the wall, or through the village, or out of the village and into the forest. Naruto. I want to leave, stated Kayumi as she gave Naruto's sleeve one last tug. Oh, alright then, replied Naruto as he took her hand, prompting Kayumi to blush and for all the girls at the table to widen their eyes. Excuse me, Ino, said Naruto politely, prompting the blonde-haired girl to scoot out of the seat for them to get out. Not saying anything else, Naruto walked over to the counter, paid for the food that Kayumi and him had eaten before walking out. All Ino, Sakura, Tenten and Hinata could do was watch them silently as they left. Tenten turned her head to look at Hinata and gave her an apologetic smile. Sorry, Hinata. I know how much you like him. Hinata's shoulder sagged a bit. No. It's fine. I missed my chance. Hey, look, Hinata. You're a pretty girl and you're really nice. I'm sure someone out there likes you, stated Tenten with a nod. Ino nodded her head in agreement. Yeah, I'm sure of that too, Hinata. And do you have any idea of who might like me then? Asked Hinata as she looked down at her tea sadly. Hey, answered Tenten as she clicked her tongue, prompting Hinata to look at her. Tenten then proceeded to point at herself. Hinata looked at her blankly. Huh. The Hyunga girl then widened her eyes and blushed furiously. Huh. Outside of the dango shop, Kayumi and Naruto were walking back to his apartment hand in hand, much to Kayumi's embarrassment. Just why did Naruto's hand have to feel so damn warm? Eesh. It felt similar to warming her hands by a fire. Naruto on the other hand was smiling. Kayumi's hand was so soft. So delicate, like if he squeezed too hard, he would break it. She really was a precious little girl. It felt great just holding it. He would never tell her that though. She would most likely end up slapping him again. Naruto. Stop here. Like right here? Asked Naruto, as he glanced around. They in the middle of the street. Yes, here, answered Kayumi with a nod. She then suddenly turned to face him before grabbing his wrist with her other hand. Blushing softly, she brought his hand up to her face and placed it against her cheek. The warmth and softness of her cheek was absolutely amazing. What? asked Naruto with a slight stammer as he blushed. Only you get to call me cute. Or adorable, answered Kayumi as she dipped her chin with a pout. Only me. She nodded her head vigorously. Yes. Only you. When you say it, I feel warm and fuzzy. When other monkeys say it, it makes me feel sick. Her words prompted Naruto to smile. All right then, Kayumi, replied Naruto as he raised his other hand to pat her on the head. You can also only call me cute or adorable, stated Kayumi with a blush. All you if you call anyone else cute. Naruto chuckled. All right, Kayumi. Don't worry. I better not have to. He smiled at her. Why did he always have to end up in these kinds of situations? It felt awfully surreal, having one's lung completely obliterated by what was essentially a spiky orb of lightning. The pain did not hit him immediately, that was for sure. Instead, his chest just suddenly felt empty, cold and wet. He tried to breathe, taking note of the weird sensation of feeling only one of his lungs filling up with air. Still, at least it hurt less than when Kayumi had forced her way out of the seal. He could be thankful for that at least. Damn if Sasuke did not look awful. Somehow, Naruto had put up a decent fight despite the fact that he no longer had the choice of relying on Kayumi's power. He would have probably won this fight if Jiraiya had not kept Kayumi back in Konoha. Plus he also had the disadvantage of not being able to land lethal blows against Sasuke, while the Uchiha had free rein to try on him. Well, not free rein, but you get the point. He felt his jaw tighten instinctually as Sasuke pulled his hand out of his chest with a sickening wet sound. Right after that, Naruto dropped to his knees as his legs gave out. A shaky breath escaped him as the front of his ruined jacket began staining red with his blood. Looking up, he saw the conflicted look on Sasuke's face. Eesh, bastard, it is already way too late to regret your decision, what with you ramming your Chidori into my chest and all, was what Naruto thought as he felt his life slowly drain away. He was going to die. Naruto was pretty sure of it. He had always thought his death would be more epic. In the distance, he heard a few soft footsteps. Was that the rest of his team finally catching up to him? Naruto. Huh. Weakly turning his head towards the direction of the voice, Naruto curved the corners of his lips up into a weak and apologetic smile once he saw who it was from. Oh, Kayumi. He tried to say more, but at that moment, his body wavered and before he knew it, he was falling backwards off of the cliff, into the thick mist below. Both Kayumi and Sasuke watched him as he fell. Sasuke managed to keep up his hardened indifference, but Kayumi's jaw had gone slack in horror. The valley was unnaturally still for a second as both Sasuke and Kayumi took it all in. Sasuke, recovering first, looked up from where his friend had fallen from at Kayumi. Despite the fatigue he felt, he quirked a brow. What was a little girl doing here? It was not until 9 fox tails and 2 fox ears sprung out of the girl that he had just a faint idea as to who he was looking at. The overwhelming power that literally shattered the rocks around her also helped him clue into the fact that whoever he was looking at was a whole lot more powerful than he was. Without exchanging any words, Sasuke immediately bolted away in the hopes that she would not give chase. She did not. Despite every particle of chakra in her body screaming at her to chase to Uchiha down and slaughter him, they screamed louder for her to help Naruto. Expelling all of shards of rock outward as she cancelled her attack, Kayumi jumped in after her fallen companion. She just hoped that she could get to him in time. She prayed to God that she could get there in time. Oh God. Naruto. Let out Kayumi with a quiet gasp as Naruto finally came into view. There was already a substantial pool of blood that had seeped from Naruto's terrible wound. For once, that uniquely red liquid frightened her. It frightened her because there was so much of it. Without wasting a second, Kayumi dashed toward him and immediately cradled him against her. He felt so cold against her. His body held none of the warmth she had known him for. That only made her even more terrified. Was he dead? Just as that soul-crushing thought entered her mind, Naruto's eyes opened weakly. Naruto, murmured Kayumi, her eyes widening as her bottom lip quivered. Kayumi, replied Naruto breathlessly, suddenly flinching as uttering her name left a terrible pain in his chest. Shish. Don't say anything. Conserve your strength. Naruto looked at her for a second before letting out a gut-wrenching chuckle. That's not how it works. I don't care. Just shut up and do what I say. I don't got much time left, said Naruto in response before he let out a wet-sounding cough. He then forced his already numb lips to form a smile. Kind of a crappy way to have it all end, huh? Kayumi felt her bottom lip quiver. No. Stay with me, Naruto. Naruto coughed weakly. Ain't I just a monkey, huh, Kayumi? No. Please, no. Don't say that, begged Kayumi, her hold on him tightening as tears pooled in her eyelids. At this point, it was really only his Uzumaki vitality that kept him conscious. Why, you're gonna live forever, replied Naruto, visibly straining as he got those words out. You're gonna have let things go. I don't want to live forever, cried Kayumi in response, her emotions pouring out through her facial expression. She then took a deep breath, nearly letting all her tears out right then and there. I don't want to live forever, without you. Naruto's response came out in gurgles as the back of his throat filled up with blood. Tears began flowing down Kayumi's cheeks as she heard him try to continue speaking. Even now he was trying his best to look out for her. Those last few words that had just escaped her hooked deep into her soul as she realized the extent of her feelings for Naruto. How in the world had she missed her affection for the boy? She had taken all those precious little moments with him for granted, but now, she knew just how much they meant to her. Just how in love was she with Naruto. She knew what had to do. Raising a hand over Naruto's face, she closed his eyes before caressing his cheek. Leaning in close to the boy's face, Kayumi positioned her lips above Naruto's before closing her eyes. As she did so, she felt a small breath escape Naruto. Most likely his last if she did not go through with this. As she inched closer and closer towards him, she realized something. Her pride was silent. The silence was what spoke volumes of her love for the boy. He felt absolutely awful when he woke up. Everything hurt. Even his toes hurt. If he had nerves in his hair, he was sure that they would also be hurting. The pain was especially concentrated around his chest. Turning his head slightly to the side, Naruto let out a quiet hiss as his muscles clenched uncomfortably. Where the heck was he? Squinting his eyes, he tried to take in as much of his surroundings as the darkness around would permit him. He was in the hospital. It was night time. The only light in the entire room came from the moon and through the gaps in the door to the hallway. It had been a long since he woke up in a hospital. He had only really been in one once, from getting beaten up by a drunk guy. The drunk guy had just come up to him one night right after he had left Ichiraku's ramen stall. He had been slurring heavily, but Naruto knew what he was saying. Most of it at least. It was honestly hard to hate someone who kept crying about his dead family whilst beating you. Maybe it was the tears, but he felt nothing but pity for the old man. He had not pressed charges. Looking out at the window, Naruto took in the night sky. There were no clouds, just stars and the moon. It was beautiful, a contrast to the sky on the night that he and Sasuke did battle in the Valley of the End. He frowned before biting down on his lower lip as the phantom pains of Sasuke's Chidori filled his chest. He knew he had been mortally wounded during that fight. Just how long was he unconscious for? It was the middle of the night, but surely there was a nurse nearby, right? He needed to get up. A grunt escaped him as he tried to sit up. Something was holding him down. What the hell was it? There was 9 of them. He had not noticed them before because they were fluffy and soft. He only noticed them once they pressed down on him. Good thing they did not hold him down too firmly though. His body hurt enough as it was. Blinking, Naruto groaned quietly as he tilted his head up. He had to squint his eyes to make out who the person sleeping next to him was. The first telltale sign was the 2 perk fox ears on her head and the glimmering silky red hair she had. He should have known since it was really on Kayumi that could have held him down with her 9 tails and all. In the dim light of his hospital room, Kayumi looked absolutely serene. Like a guardian angel that kept watch over him as he slept. Except she had fox tails and fox ears instead of wings. Plus she was a lot cuter than an angel. He let out another grunt as he tried to sit up against. He watched her face this time as he did it and took note of the slight tension in Kayumi's forehead as she frowned in her sleep. She even let out a quiet groan of discontent. She could be adorable sometimes. Most of the time. Almost all the time. Sometimes, she honestly did act like a fox. A little baby fox cub. Always hungry for his attention. How long had she been sleeping next to him? Did she stay the entire time he was unconscious? The sound of footsteps knocked him out of his thoughts. His ears twitched at the sound of them. Whoever was walking outside had on high heels and a gait that made them seem very important. Just who could it be? The footsteps suddenly stopped, right outside his door, prompting Naruto to quirk an eyebrow. Was it a nurse that had come to check up on him? As the door opened, in popped in blonde hair, followed up by a face, then the top half of a dark green blouse. It was Tsunade. She looked at him. He looked back at her. Hey, greeted Naruto in a somewhat loud whisper, his voice a bit hoarse as he slowly raised a hand to wave at her. Hey, Naruto, replied Tsunade as she swallowed quietly, her eyes moving from Naruto to Kayumi, feeling any pain. He shook his head. No. Just what you'd expect from almost dying. That's still pain. Naruto quirked the brow at the frown on Tsunade's face. Why so anxious, Tsunade? Let out Tsunade in response. The 9-tailed fox told me not to bother you, or else she would. She would. Tsunade cleared her throat as quietly as she could. She said, and I quote, "If you bother me or my companion, I will tear off your skin so that it won't matter how many wrinkles you have." Naruto shuddered, eliciting a quiet mew from Kayumi. Eesh. That sounds exactly like her. Right, replied Tsunade, her voice trailing off as she began to leave. Hey, are you just going to leave me here? She looked back at him. Yes. Then the door closed and she walked away, leaving him alone with Kayumi. Naruto stared at the door for a second before looking down at Kayumi. She was still sleeping peacefully, despite how loud he was. During his conversation with Tsunade, Kayumi's lips had parted and there was now just a tiny trail of drool that was pooling underneath her chin. Honestly, she really was hopeless cause. His hopeless cause. Raising a hand, he reached over and gave Kayumi's head a pat. Her ears immediately twitched in response to his touch and she let out a quiet mew. Eesh. He really was getting addicted to patting her on the head. Her hair was always so soft and silky and her ears always reacted happily. Purred Kayumi as her lips curved upward into a dreamy smile. Plus he really liked the sounds she made. In some ways, she was like a baby fox. She loved being taken care of, praised and nurtured. Plus she always got jealous whenever he had his attention on someone else. Sure, she would act all mean and tough, but the moment he even hinted at the idea of giving her head a pat or her tummy a rub, she would melt. Naruto, moaned Kayumi quietly, her head instinctively pushing up against Naruto's hand as he continued to run his fingers through her hair. Her little vocal reaction only spurred Naruto to keep on going. MHMHMMHM. Yes. Please. Behind the ears, Naruto. Naruto quirked a brow, Kayumi. Her eyes fluttered open as the corner of her lip curved upward into a smirk before she looked up at him. In the flesh, replied Kayumi before winking, well, not literally. I'm made of chakra. Naruto held back a chuckle because it would going to hurt like absolute hell if he laughed now. Instead, he smiled, which prompted her smirk to turn into a smile. Then they spent a second smiling at each other before Kayumi inched her way up and embraced him tightly. Not too tightly, mind you, just enough to express herself. God, I was so damned worried about you, admitted Kayumi as she pressed her face into the crook of his neck. Worried about me? A monkey. She shook her head, her nose tickling him slightly as she did so. You're not a monkey. Not anymore. Oh, asked Naruto, quirking a brow, what am I now? Kayumi looked up at him, her blue-gray eyes glimmering slightly as it reflected the light from the moon. You're my companion. One of my precious people, answered Kayumi timidly, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Naruto smiled, you're one of my precious people too, Kayumi. He then reached forward and brushed a few stray hairs to the side of her head, revealing her feminine eyebrows and cute forehead. His hand then trailed down so that he could cup her cheek. Even now, began Kayumi slowly as she glanced down at his hand, I am still worried about you. I didn't think you were going to wake up. Naruto quirked a brow, why didn't you think I was going to wake up? I had to do something to save you. Something that I have never done before, admitted Kayumi as she crawled even closer to him. I don't know what's going to happen to you in the long run, but for now, you're safe. You're safe with me. So what did you do to me? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side as he asked his question. I had to infuse your body with my chakra. So now, you're a hybrid. A mix of human and tailed beast. Half of your body is made up of my chakra and the other half is what was originally you, answered Kayumi, her words prompting Naruto to widen his eyes. So wait, will I just stay like a hybrid like this forever until I die? Well, at first, all my chakra did was heal your lung and chest. In your body, my chakra had no mind to control it, so what it did was essentially devour your cells to make room for itself, explained Kayumi with a frown, pretty confusing, huh? So like, will I disappear into a cloud of red chakra when all my cells get eaten? Asked Naruto, his brow tensing slightly in worry. Kayumi shook her head, no. Your soul will remain intact, and over time, it will become the new mind for my chakra. So I'll end up being made completely out of chakra like you. She nodded, I believe. So, does that mean I'm immortal? Asked Naruto, his voice getting a little bit higher pitched near the end of his sentence. Is that a bad thing? Naruto shrugged, I don't know. Honestly, I'm a bit mixed here. How so? I mean, I get to spend forever with you now. I think that's fantastic, answered Naruto with a nod, prompting Kayumi to smile in relief, but I think it's unfair that I get to live forever. Not anyone else does. He then sighed, plus, if I ever became Hokage now, I would be the last Hokage ever since I wouldn't be able to die. All the Hokages have always worked their hardest to get to where they were without needing the help of others. Naruto, whispered Kayumi in a soothing voice as she caressed his cheek, you can't always rely on just yourself. You can't help others unless you let others help you. Naruto looked at her before chuckling quietly, that has been the kindest and wisest thing I have ever heard you say. Kayumi puffed out her cheeks. I can be wise, ya know. I just try not to because I'm afraid it might not get through that thick skull of yours. So how did you infuse your chakra into me? Asked Naruto, his words prompting Kayumi's cheeks to heat up a little. Well mumbled Kayumi quietly. You? Asked Naruto, quirking a brow. I had to give you the kiss of life, answered Kayumi with a slight stammer, her blush spreading to her ears as she forced the words out. He gave her a blank look. So, you kissed me to infuse me with chakra. Don't say it so casually, replied Kayumi, stuttering slightly as she playfully slapped him on the arm. Why? Because it's embarrassing, answered Kayumi. I guess it's kind of embarrassing, admitted Naruto in response as he gave her a sympathetic smile. He then snorted before looking into her eyes. I had never thought that it would take almost dying to get a kiss out of you. Idiot, remarked Kayumi with a blush as she him another playful smack. You just woke up from a coma and the only thing you care about is that I kissed you. I'm fine now. I don't got much to worry about, replied Naruto with a shrug, though I do really want to get out of this hospital gown. Maybe brush my teeth and take a shower. Oh, you want to take a shower? They have one in the restroom. Naruto quirked a brow. They have showers in the bathrooms of hospitals. I mean it's for the staff, replied Kayumi with a shrug. Oh, alright then, said Naruto in response. Here, let me help you up. Okay, alright, easy. Try not to tense up too much. Your muscles are still adapting to the strain of my chakra pumping through them. Got it. Whoa, try to not to step on my tails. He shuffled slightly. Sorry. It's just a bit dark in here. Don't worry, it's bright outside in the hallway. So just follow me, replied Kayumi as she looped an arm underneath Naruto's shoulder. The trip to the restroom was a short one. It was only a few steps down the hall. Luckily, they encountered no nurses, otherwise, security would have been immediately called, since Kayumi had neglected to hide her ears and tails. Eesh, the hospital was really spooky at night. Good thing he had Kayumi to hold on to. Once inside the restroom, Naruto immediately spotted the shower in the corner. It had curtains around it and it looked only big enough for one person. You could fit two in there, but it would have been a tight fit. For some reason though, Naruto just had this sneaking suspicion that he would have to share the shower. Looking down at Kayumi, Naruto saw the subtle glint in her eye that confirmed his suspicion. Do you wanna share the shower? Why? How generous of you. Of course, replied Kayumi swiftly with a snicker. Right, said Naruto in response with a nod, but there isn't much room. So unless you're okay with some touching, I'll be fine, thank you very much, retorted Kayumi as she began stripping out of her clothes. Eep! Let out Naruto as he promptly turned around, only to realize that there was a mirror behind him and that he could see Kayumi strip anyways. Though despite this, it was not the sight of Kayumi's dreamy body that made him widen his eyes. No, it was actually his own reflection. Were those fox ears on his head? Where did his regular ears go? Why was his hair now tinted red? His hair was now the same shade of red as Kayumi's hair was. Did his whiskers come back too?